I would really just like to say hello and welcome. It's fantastic to see so many of you here. Gary is going to say a few words and then we'll introduce Jonathan. Gary, would you like?
Excellent. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say a few very brief words, actually, of welcome, really, at the start of this event, just to warmly welcome you all and thank you all for joining us. Gosh, I can see lots of familiar names and familiar faces, so thank you. It's lovely to see you all, both friends from the UK and yeah, I'm just looking at the chat and seeing friends from around the world as well. So good morning if you're here in the UK, good afternoon, good evening if you're elsewhere. I think we're friends from Australia and USA and well, lots of other countries that's joining us. So thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, I'm sure people will probably watch this as well on recording. So whether you're watching it live now or later, then you're very welcome. Thank you very much. I'm not going to say terribly much at the start of this webinar because you've tuned in to hear Jonathan, not to me, but just simply to touch base with everyone. It's been a year like no other year really, with so many challenges, but yet so many opportunities as well. And one of the challenges that I think we've all really felt really acutely is not being able to meet up face to face with each other. And it's not that long ago that we would have been expecting to have our 99th Faculty of Homeopathy Congress. And we've all missed the opportunity to meet face to face. But one of the upsides has been, a lot more of this sort of online activity and webinars. And I'm really delighted to see all the faces and all the names and to see you all joining us. We hope to have more of these sorts of events, so please stay tuned. Let us know if there's certain speakers and certain subjects that you'd like us to bring to you, because we're planning more of these types of events. And yes, I just want to thank also Helen Beaumont, who is, as most of you know, the medical dean here at the Faculty of Homeopathy, who has put in a lot of hard work to set up this webinar. And also Alison Davies, who's our digital communications officer at the faculty as well. And some other people behind the scenes have been working hard as well that I'll not mention. But also thank you to Jonathan. Jonathan's a good friend of the Faculty of Homeopathy, a long-term member and fellow, and I'm sure Helen will introduce him, but I just want to express my thanks to Helen and to Jonathan. Jonathan's well known, well loved by all of us, and I'm really delighted. And thank you, Jonathan, for giving your time this weekend to come and speak to us like this. And yeah, there's lots of challenges all around about us today, but I also feel lots of opportunities. And to me, and I'm sure a lot of you feel sort of similar, to me, as we look on at what's happening, without going into detail, I feel the world has never needed homeopathy more, actually, than it does at present in so many different ways. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope that material from Jonathan and hopefully some of the chat and some of the discussion will all be helpful and enjoyable and useful in your practice, and ultimately will lead to more of our patients being able to benefit from this incredible system of medicine that we're all proud to be guardians of. Anyhow, thank you once again, and I think I'll stop there and hand back to Helen.
Thank you, Gary, for that introduction. It's lovely to see your face, even if we can't see you in person, as it is to see everybody here. I really think Jonathan probably needs no introduction at all. He's known worldwide as a brilliant, brilliant teacher. He's a fantastic homeopath and is incredibly clear and enthusiastic in his teaching. And I'm so looking forward to this seminar today. So I think without further ado, Jonathan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Helen and Gary, and good morning, everybody. It really is exciting, actually, to have a faculty event. I've always found congresses of the faculty hold have been wonderful events, and we really missed it this year. But it's really nice to be able to share homeopathy with everybody. So we can't cover the whole animal kingdom, but what I thought we would do today is, first of all, start off with a kind of 10-15 minute introduction into the animal kingdom in terms of how animal cases present. And actually, the whole point, the whole 2 hours is going to be about giving you what, from my experience, are the most characteristic things. Most characteristic things about animals, and the phrases, expressions, issues that animal cases have, so that you can, alert words, trigger words that will alert you to it being an animal case. And then for each of these 5 families, the mammals, spiders, snakes, insects, and birds, again, what in my experience has been the most characteristic thing, so the recurrent life stories, recurrent issues that people have from those families, recurrent words, recurrent expressions, characteristic gestures, and maybe the 10, 12 most characteristic things for each of those groups, which of course will then help us to make that tricky distinction, because I'm sure we've all been in that state where we think, well, this is animal, looks like animal, but which one? So hopefully it'll help with that. Many years ago, I attended an excellent seminar by Jonathan Shaw on bird remedies in London, and he said that he analyzed all the bird provings that had been done. And what he found is that 80% of the information that comes through in a proving, in other words, it then goes into the repertory in terms of rubrics, about 80% is not unique to that individual remedy. So 80% of the information was just common bird themes. And I'm sure the same applies for every remedy group. So what that means is that, let's take tarantula. 30 years ago, we probably thought we knew about tarantula. But actually, 80% of what we thought was tarantula was just common spider. For example, that rubric, hurry, everybody must hurry. It's a wonderful rubric. Tarantula is the main remedy, but you could put nearly all the spider remedies in that rubric. All the spiders want everyone to hurry up. And I'm sure, the same runs through our materia medica. So if we can assimilate the general themes of the different animal families, then it's quite easy to distinguish the two. Plus, what it means is that then you can identify what is not common for that family. In other words, what is left over in the case, and that'll be what's unique and indicating the particular remedy. What is left in the case after you say, okay, this is the animal stuff, this is the spider stuff, what's left, and that'll be a strange, rare, and peculiar symptom, or something that's unique in that remedy, or very often that thing which is the unique survival strategy for that species. So what is the most characteristic thing in an animal case? And my feeling is this: the animal state is someone's doing something to me. And by the way, everything that we're going to project, PowerPoints, will give that to you. You'll be receiving that, all of the PowerPoints. So someone's doing something to me, or maybe something is doing something to me, or some entity outside of myself. With minerals, the feeling is there's something lacking inside me, there's some deficiency, which means I can't function properly. In plants, it's all about sensitivity, isn't it? Everything that's affecting me and how I react to that. But the animal state is some entity outside of myself, or maybe inside myself, but it's separate from me, is doing something to me. So we're going to talk about what the common themes, issues, expressions, sensation, and gestures are in, first of all, just the animal state generally. So any animal remedy, any animal case could use these expressions. So first of all, there can be the perception of the disease as a malign entity. And the common expressions there are, it takes over, it's overwhelming, it's dominating me, it's overpowering. And another word common is, it's attacking me. Or they talk about their condition as happening in attacks. These are all very common expressions, alert expressions for an animal case. It's oppressive, it's aggressive. I have to fight this condition. You know, animals, and a lot of animals aren't very nice, really. You know, nature is red in tooth and claw, isn't it? Then perception of life itself as a fight. That's another way animal cases present. Life is a constant struggle. It's a battle. It's a fight for survival. I'm struggling to stay on top. Again, these are animal expressions. I mean, look at that. This is a disturbing picture, isn't it? And just the savage brutality of it. And, you know, that's what the animal kingdom is like. And it's the idea of me versus you. It's either you die or I die. And, you know, we have to remember that our patients who need an animal remedy are viewing their lives, their experiences through a lens like this. It's, you know, this is delusion. Somehow, the consciousness of a particular animal species has become grafted onto their consciousness, and they experience life as if they are that creature. It's strange but true. And you know, if we look at this, we see just how like intense life in the animal kingdom is, and that's what our patients are feeling. And that's why they can come up with these strange expressions that make no sense at the rational level. Then there's the idea of perception of others in their life as the enemy. Could I just request that everyone just checks that they've got their audio on mute, please? Thank you. So expressions like, she's always putting me down, he's a bully, people are always criticizing me. But putting me down, making me feel small is a very common expression. They make me feel small, they ignore me, they make my life hell. So there's an enemy out there. And this is, you know, the whole thing around bullying and us and them, and like who's in, who's out, who's the best, who's not good enough. These are all very animal issues, and you know, these will come up in the story, the life story of the person. Not necessarily their own story, it can be what they're sensitive to, they see happening to others. You know, whatever we're sensitive to, whatever we choose to talk about, if we're allowed to, without leading questions, you know, that will reflect what's in our consciousness. Then another way in which animal cases present is the species treatment at the hands of humans. And this is very important. So, for example, persecution, poisoning, trapping, extermination, which has gone on for centuries for a number of species, which are important remedies, like wolf or peregrine falcon, for example. Then commercial exploitation. especially abusive farming methods or factory farming. And then field sport, things like hunting, shooting, falconry. And, just going back to this one, that awful picture is a bear trapped inside a tiny cage. And this is bear bile farming. Absolutely appalling practice where bears are kept in tiny crates in which they can't move. Sometimes they're called crush cages, which actually squeeze the body. And I've had 3 cases in which a patient has needed bear as their remedy, in which they have definitely, when they've gone deep into their state, described this experience. It's like, I'm in this tiny cage, I can't move, the bars are pushing into my flesh, and they're poking me. And this is what happens. They come with needles and syringes and stick it in the gallbladder and pull out the bile. And the bear literally spends its life crushed in this cage. It's beyond belief, so inhumane. But what we find, if you look at the provings, is that this kind of treatment of species over the course of time has gone into the group consciousness of the species, undoubtedly. And it often forms the most important part of the remedy picture. So that, again, is something to be aware of. So common themes in animal cases: bullying, jealousy, competition, desire to be the best. More common themes: hurt by betrayal, disloyalty, deceit, cheating. Of course, this isn't exclusive to the animal kingdom, but it's a common story. And again, it's like, that person has hurt me. Someone has done something to me. Whenever that's the main feeling in the story, in the case, then it's animal. The desire to be included, so feeling pushed out, excluded, rejected. Then the theme of competition, very important, very common. And so you get expressions like, I want to win, I like being the best, I'm very competitive. I always like to have an edge. That's a wonderful animal expression. The margin between life and death in the animal kingdom is very small. So if you have an edge over the other animals, then maybe you'll survive. I want to stand out. I like being the center of attention. But then, this kind of idea, standing out, center of attention, look at me. Of course, it's not exclusively animal, but it can be part of the picture. Or it's like, I want to blend in. I don't want to stand out. It's the same idea, but the flip side. It's still, the same idea. Of course, blending in is a defense strategy. And then the whole theme of denial, which is so important in homeopathy. So very often you'll get phrases like, it's not that I want to be the center of attention. It's not that I want to be noticed. It's not about being the best, but I'm not very competitive, but I don't want to stand out, but. And we may be thinking, well, if they deny it, then it's not their issue. Yes, it is, because, you don't deny something unless it's in your consciousness. You don't even mention it unless it's in your consciousness. You wouldn't think to mention it. It's what's in our consciousness that counts. Then vulnerability, another animal theme. So animal cases will often say, I feel vulnerable, or I don't want to appear weak. So if you're weak in the animal kingdom, that's it. You're not going to survive. Or it makes me feel helpless. This is the first few moments of life. maximum vulnerability, maximum danger. Then the whole idea of prey and predator. This was an award-winning photograph, and it's amazing, isn't it? Look at the expressions. You know, the ferocity of the predator's face and the absolute terror on the prey. I think that's a ground squirrel and a fox. You know, that just sums it up, doesn't it? So predator words that may come out, words like chase, hunt, grab, bite, claw, kill. And then prey words, hide, run, escape, freeze, make myself small. You know, I saw a 7-year-old girl last week. I think was a very nice case of lac caninum, bedwetting. And, you know, the parents said, you know, when she's lovely and, you know, loves cuddling and hugging, but when she loses her temper, it's scratching and biting. You know, children are uncompensated. They act out this state, you know, this animal state. And, you know, what's your favorite game? Oh, hide and seek, chase. I love running. I love chasing. I'm the fastest, and I'm really good at hiding. You know, these are all animal survival strategies. Prey and predator. A patient can express either the prey or the predator state of the animal. So they can experience, you know, tiger, for example, tiger energy as the prey of tiger. So, or they can experience tiger energy as the tiger in its preying role. Do you understand what I mean? It can be, you can perceive tiger energy as the victim of it. It's still your remedy. Or people can do both. They can sometimes talk in terms of the prey or in terms of the predator. So we don't need to worry, get worked up about, oh, you know, is this a prey or a predator animal? You just need to understand what the words are saying, what the sensation is that they're expressing. And this is an interesting thing, the victim after the remedy. And what I found almost invariably, if it's a victim animal remedy, when you've given it afterwards, the patient says things like, I'm not backing down anymore. I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm standing my ground. I'm standing up for myself. So backing down, standing your ground, these are all animal themes. I've never spoken out like this before. I'm being much more assertive. I'm surprising myself with how I'm behaving. And it can happen overnight. You know, the victim fighting back. Then the theme of territory, very important in animal cases. And expressions that reflect that. I want to make my mark. He's invading my space. They're taking over. I feel pushed out. So the marking, scent markings, very common in animals. And this expression, I want to make my mark, that's common in animal cases. Another important theme in animal cases, one of inner conflict. And that's expressed by, and what's this about? I think it's that, you know, part of human life is the struggle between our high nature and lower nature, isn't it? It's a fundamental part of human life. We're daily battle, really, many levels. Am I going to do the right thing, or, you know, the higher thing? And in a sense, it's a conflict between our high nature and our animal nature. our lower nature. And I think when someone needs an animal remedy, that animal consciousness accentuates that split, that conflict. So the idea of inner conflict is brought to a greater expression. So very often people will, they'll express reservations about the things. I say, I feel bad about this. I want to do this, but it makes me feel guilty. I'm pulled in two directions. It feels like I'm split in two. And it's very important, very common thing in animal cases. Then animal people can be very magnetic, animated, engaging, plenty of movement and gesturing, or the complete lack of these qualities and the failed state, the polar opposite. But that's less common. Then as you go deeper and more specific, as the patient goes deeper into their state, the expressions become less and less general. As they connect with the consciousness of the particular animal family, they'll use expressions common to that group. These will be expressions which reflect the qualities of that group as a whole. They relate to anatomy, physiology, or behavior, any aspect of that group's specific zoological adaptations. Eventually, their expressions become specific to the source of their remedy. They reflect the species' unique adaptations, the qualities which enable that species to survive by occupying a very precise ecological niche. And these unique qualities are likely to be expressed in the patient as very unusual words, sensations, or themes, or as strange, rare, and peculiar symptoms. And sometimes you go through quite a steady progression down into that state, but sometimes the strange, rare, and peculiar can be the first thing the patient says. It doesn't all come nicely arranged, as I'm sure we're all aware. Okay, so that's set the scene, and now we're going to have a quick look at the different groups and see how they compare. And I thought we'd start with insects because I believe that insects are the most underprescribed animal group. For some reason, they're easy to overlook, aren't they? Insects, they're little, plus quite a lot of us don't like them very much. But I think they're underprescribed and they're a fascinating group. And so what are the most characteristic features of insects? Well, metamorphosis is the big thing. They're small, busily active, sometimes ugly, often disliked. So these are the things that are going to express themselves homeopathically. And metamorphosis is the big one. It's unique to insects. I mean, amphibians do it, but otherwise it's an insect thing. Transformation from one form to another. Egg, larva, pupa, adult. So we look at, there's egg, larva, pupa, adult. And the thing is, it's all the same organism. Larval and adult stages are completely different forms, and the insect transforms itself from one form to another, but it remains the same animal. Typically, the larval stage is ugly, even repulsive. The adult stage can be strikingly beautiful. It's rapid change. Typical caterpillar may increase its body weight by 800 times in 3 weeks. Insect people can eat a lot. Voracious appetite. So what are the homeopathic themes that relate to the phenomenon of metamorphosis? Well, a number of them. One is duality, and the existence of two contradictory consciousness at the same time, or an alternation. And these two ideas or concepts are incompatible. It's like you've got the larva and the adult at the same time and, trying to be one thing. So this young lady has a case of lamanitis butterfly. She's talking about having two sides to her brain. With the little video clips, I just ask again everyone to respect the confidentiality of the patients who've generously allowed their cases to be recorded. So no screenshots, please, no recording. And you won't hear them speaking. I'm going to speak for them. So what they're saying, I'm going to speak. It's the only way really to do it. Otherwise, the sound quality is not good enough, and you'll find it frustrating. But I will speak for them, but you can, watch their gestures. So she says, as soon as I have a moment free, I find my mind attacking me, and that's animal. So that's it. So tell me about that. It starts popping in these ideas. I've got two sides to my brain. One is like, you should be happy. You should be a happy person. But the other side of my brain says, no, when you're happy, bad things can happen. So this negative side of my brain is trying to protect the positive side by saying, if we're negative, then no bad things will come in. We'll be able to see it. We'll be able to get rid of it. So it's massively overthinking everything. It could be part of my ADHD. My brain is constantly thinking like a train. And that idea, this is insect brain. Rush of thoughts, chaotic. Can't stop the brain going, and it can become confused, foggy. That's typical insect. But my favorite question, describe it again. The two sides to the brain. One side is constantly happy. The other side is this pessimistic side that thinks by being mean to my happy side, it's going to save me. Being mean, that's animal, isn't it? That gesture, being mean. Because by being mean, it's going to save me as a whole. Because it's going, when you're happy, bad things happen. And you don't see them coming. Whereas if we're negative, we'll see them coming. We'll be able to protect us as a whole. So it's interesting, seeing things coming, not seeing it coming. This is animal, isn't it? And protect us as a whole is animal. But the really specific insect thing here is this conflict, the contradiction, the duality, the split. Then more to do with metamorphosis, feeling not good enough. What one is now is unworthy and of low value. Feelings of dirt, disgust, and shame. I don't think I've got anything to talk about to people. There's nothing interesting about me. I don't have any talents. I'm not well read. So conversation is difficult. You see two kinds of insect people. This kind of disheveled, beaten up, failed state. And then the polar opposite, which we'll talk about in a moment. I feel lost. I feel maybe my life is on hold. What might that be? In insect cases, often they talk about my life being on hold. This is the pupal stage. Or they can talk about being alive and dead at the same time. Or suspended animation. This is the pupal stage. So I hate confrontation. I'm not good at confrontation. I don't like it. I can't think quickly. I'm always going to lose. I'm always going to lose. If somebody says, if there's an argument over something, and I feel I've been wronged or insulted, which is very common, insect, I can't explain it. I can't explain how I've been wronged. They'll always have an answer. It will always turn out to be my fault. First thing she said about herself when I asked her to describe herself is, I'm stupid. How does it feel? Do you always lose an argument? I feel little. I feel belittled, small, worthless. This sums it up for a lot of insect cases. Small, belittled, worthless. Another thing relating to metamorphosis, the need to change, to add value to oneself, to gain self-worth, to become better, to become something different. And they often talk about change, transformation, and transition. You know, those words just come into their conversation, or they'll often say, there's so much change and transition in my life at the moment. Also with metamorphosis, working hard and fast. And the means to self-validation is through work, which leads to a sense of achievement. Desire to improve oneself, intellectually through studying and learning, materially, becoming successful, having money and good quality possessions, clothes, car, house. They often talk about material things, insect people. Then morally, aversion to behavior which is degrading, traumatized by such experiences from the past. So really compensating, being very kind of upright. And often it's improving in stages, e.g. school, university, first job, with this sort of gesture. And it's like they're saying egg, larva, pupa, adult. So the insect gestures, steps, the characteristic gesture of the hand moving upward in stages while talking about progress and development. So I think I was born ambitious. My parents were real workers, and insect people often say that their parents were hard workers. My parents' dream was for a better future for their children. So being good at school, see what she's doing, getting a degree, getting a job, making something in yourself, you learn, you improve. Yeah. So this is that gesture I'm talking about, stepwise. Then there's the clawing gesture, which is common, and that's when they're talking about the sensation, which is common in insect cases, of thousands of tiny creatures crawling on my skin. You know, they talk about like, oh, it's like hundreds of ants crawling on me, or millions of insects crawling on me. And there's a kind of desire to rip the flesh. Feeling the itching and crawling sensation is deep inside, under the skin. And just watch the expression on her face. Inside, something's going on inside. It's not burning, it's itching, it's crawling. I want to get inside and scratch everything. I want to open up my flesh and scratch everything. It's driving me mad. It's not on the outside, it's on the inside. And they talk about it, you know, it's maddening, it's driving me crazy. Typical of insects. Then there's the pincers, finger and thumb together, when they're talking about detail or to emphasize a point. Just watch what she does. It's an intense feeling of anxiety, a worry. See that pincer gesture, very common in insects. It's like you're picking up an ant. It's not 100% exclusive to insects, but it's common in insects. And if you notice this lady, she's very poised, very elegant, which is the other kind of insect presentation, polar opposite. Poised, elegant, well-dressed, sophisticated, confident. So there's a confusion. Thoughts can be rushed, disorganized. The mind can be foggy and confused. Very common in insects. My mind is 100 miles an hour, all over the place. I like it in small doses, and then completely exhausted, which is typical of insects. Tired, drained, and then I'll swing up, and I'll be running around, but it's running around not focused. It's like a butterfly collecting nectar. You float from one thing to another without going anywhere. I'd like to be a purposeful butterfly rather than a flitty one. My thoughts are completely random. Something comes in, that kind of thing. So she actually told us the remedy. Amazing. Inner feeling in insects, small. Feeling powerless and helpless. Small in insects is weak, helpless. Small in spiders is different. We'll see that in a moment. Feeling dirty, ugly, disgusting. Exploited, feeling of being a slave, oppressed, suffocated, big insect word. Belittled, insulted, squashed, crushed, very important insect words. Annoyed, impatient, feeling bugged, can be violent and rude. This idea, don't bug me, or, and this invasion of space, they're bugging me, my mind's all confused. This is an insect picture. Desire to be attractive, sophisticated, rich, successful, beautiful. Opposite to how they really feel. In the failed state, disheveled, ungroomed, poor posture, beaten down, some of our most beaten up patients, remedies like Musca domestica, Coccus cacti, Blatter. In the successful state, elegant, expensively dressed, poised, can be haughty. Hair long, well groomed, colored. Hair is really important in insects. Clothes expensive, stylish, colorful, chic, elegant. Robots and aliens, fear, dream, or fascination. And if you don't like insects, look away now. Look at that one. It really is like an alien, isn't it? You can see why, good thing insects aren't 6 feet tall. Imagine how scary that would be. And they can be unemotional, cold, detached, relentless, machine-like in their work. Structured, organized, efficient, without feeling. So, you might think it's mineral kind of quality. Okay, well, that's, for me, those are the most characteristic things in insect cases. And now we're going to contrast it with spiders. I know one or two of you really don't like spider pictures, so I've only put a couple in. I'll warn you, there's one coming up now. I think it's quite a friendly spider. So the big thing, okay, the picture's gone. Humor, teasing, and cruelty. This is the main theme, number one theme, seen in most spider cases in one form or another. But it's a spectrum. So it can be laughing, humor, cheerfulness, or it can be teasing, gently making fun, tickling, or then playing practical jokes, playing tricks, annoying others. So this is like the nice end of the spectrum. So he's talking about his brother when they were children. It takes a lot to wind him up, he says. That's a spider expression. When we were really young, playing with toys, I'd annoy him. I'd just be continually annoying him. Annoy is a big spider word, very big. I'd take the toy away from him and put it back. Or if he was watching TV, I'd stand in front of it and tie up my shoelace. You see that his expression, the sort of cheerful expression. He'd be saying, "Get out of the way, do it over the way." And I'd say, "No, I'm going to do it here." Silly stuff. Never any malice in it. I like annoying my children, he said. I'll sit on the stairs and drop something light on their head, or dangle a bit of string to brush their head. Anything, just to let them know I'm around. Sometimes my other son would be lying in bed. He's lying asleep, and I get a soft bit of paper, and I'll stick it up his nostril and tickle his hairs. I'll tell you what, it's the most annoying sensation possible. I'll do that to him. He'll get angry, but I'll have run away by the time he wakes up. Little silly things. Very odd, isn't it? But why would he want to tickle his son's nostrils? Well, the answer to that is what we feel is being done to us, that's what we do to others. Kind of instinctive thing. You can't stop yourself, you just kind of do it. And so that's the sensation he's experiencing at some deep subconscious level. And that spider sensation, this kind of deep internal tickle and itch. But then the other end of the spectrum, sarcasm, laughing at people, taunting, bullying, malicious behavior, harassment, persecution, even deliberate cruelty, torture, and sadism. Of course, not many people are going to walk in and say, I'm a sadist. Can you make me better? But a lot of these things will be virtual. You'll find them in dreams, or the video games that people like. One spider child said to me, "Oh, I like those video games where people blow up." What do you like about them? Oh, it makes me happy to feel about people being in pain. This is sadism. Feeling trapped. Any animal can feel that. It's just the way in which one is trapped that's interesting. For spiders, the feeling is that you're held back. When you see a victim of a spider, it's all wrapped up in silk, isn't it? And it can't move, but it's still alive. Imagine what that feels like. Held back. They've just put traffic lights in where I live, and they stay red for a long time. If I'm second or third in line and they go green, I can see the people in front. They know. It just annoys me. It's 20 seconds before they start rolling. I'm impatient. I just like to, if I'm going somewhere, I like to be able to go there. If it's an accident, fair enough. But if it's traffic lights, simple things like that, I am impatient. What's the feeling you get? See this gesture, that spider. Frustrated is how I feel. I know I can get going. It's not difficult. You know when the lights are going to go. I just see his face. It's a pity we don't have a pause button for our patients because you miss things, but your subconscious picks up on it and you get a feeling about them. He put two things in his form describing himself when he first came to see me. One was, I'm impatient, and the second was, I don't like being kept waiting. And of course, I was running half an hour late that morning. Fortunately, he saw the funny side to it. Don't hold me back. Hold me back is a spider expression. Feeling trapped. They can go on to describe a feeling of being tied, wrapped up, or in chains. I feel caught, stuck, tied. It feels like I'm in a web. They often talk about time. There's never enough time. I'm always in a hurry. Time's running out. And they can be restless, fidgety, twitching. And the feeling is this deep-seated inner restlessness, almost like an internal itch. Can be described as an inner irritation. And this feeling is on a spectrum with other spider sensations, such as tingling, and a feeling of electricity running through the body. I'm feeling agitated now. I don't feel relaxed. You get hot under the collar. Mouth goes dry. Like now, I'm feeling that way. See, he can't sit still. And the children, of course, are jumping up and down on their chair. This kind of agitation. And the reaction is to fidget, move restlessly with an inability to keep still. In the extreme, movements are involuntary with jerking of the limbs and twitching. My legs feel like, at night time, like the nervous system is getting feedback of electricity and they twitch. Makes my legs kick out. Very common. Twitching, jerking, it can be ataxia. They can be hyperactive, driven, industrious. I really need to be getting somewhere. I'm driven, but it's much more directed than in insects as a rule. And so here he's talking about being focused. When I have a goal in mind, I'm very single-minded, very determined. I don't like to be dictated to what I can and cannot do. That's typical spider. In a sporting sense or a business sense, if I've got something in mind I want to do, then it's going to happen. I'm very positive about things like that. It's only a question of time. If I put the effort in and focus on that goal, then it will succeed. It's just a question of time. See that very kind of determined, quite sort of cold. And which ties in with the very characteristic thing, which is tunnel vision. They often talk about having tunnel vision with very characteristic hand gesture, which is basically this. Gestures with hands held beside the face, next to the eyes, arms extending forwards parallel to each other. And if you look at, you see the eyes are all fixed on the front of the body. So the spider's basically looking forwards like this. And it's a bit like a heat-seeking missile. It latches onto its prey. So they say things like, I'm very fixed on my goals. I always get what I want. Very one-pointed. I can be very blinkered. I shut everything else out except what I'm focused on. If I put my mind on something, there it is. Nothing will distract me. That sort of gesture. I can be very unemotional, very clinical, almost like a mathematician adding things up. I add up the different parts. That adds up to where I want to go. So we're going to do that. The only thing that matters is that that's what I want to do, and that is my goal. Therefore, I'm going to achieve it. Describe the single-mindedness a bit more. What's it like at its most? It's like when I'm playing football best. Watch his arms. Everything tunnels in. Everything becomes very clear. You get complete clarity of what has to happen. All other things become irrelevant because this is what you are looking to do. You know, when there's a gesture, it makes what they're talking about 100,000 times more important because the body doesn't lie. If you're in the car driving and someone's giving you directions and they say at the traffic lights turn right, which way do you turn? You turn left every time because the body doesn't lie. And with gestures, when the gesture emphasizes that this is coming from the subconscious, this is important information. Nothing either side of me. Nothing either side of me. Complete focus, straight ahead. Nothing to draw my attention either way. Like I've got blinkers on and I can't see anything. There it is. Something to really look out for with spiders. So other gestures, fidgeting fingers, weaving, spinning a web, arms wrapped around their bodies. They can do this when they go deep into their state. It's like they're all wrapped up in a web, in silk, trapped. Like this. This is classic spider dressing. Dark background, a splash of color. And she's talking about how she was basically imprisoned by her fiance over a course of years. It was all a web. I fell for what he said. His way of weaving and webbing me in. It got to the point, without even realizing what he was doing or what I let him do, it got to the point I wasn't allowed to leave the house without him. I worked for him, and that was all I could do. I wasn't allowed to speak to my friends or anything like that. So when I found out he'd been having an affair, he made me so dependent on him. I had no life beyond him. Did you see that? Weaving and webbing. And this is total domination, total control, and that's characteristic of spider stories. Remember the man, he said, I don't like anyone dominating me, dictating to me. So the idea of total control is spider. You're completely in the power of the other person. Just what I'm a bubbly person, she says. I like to make people happy. See what she's doing with her hair? I hate when I don't get my own way. Weaving. I like making people happy. This is part of spider. They often say that. Fun, laughter, domination. They speak of complete domination, total control. And often patients will talk about the difference in strength and in particular size in the power struggle. Strong aversion to being dominated by another. They can feel powerless. If you imagine the state of a spider's victim, often the prey will be paralyzed but not killed, wrapped in silk In the state, the spider's meal remains fresh until it's ready to eat. Alive, but totally in the power, unable to move. And this can be the inner experience of a spider patient, feeling of utter powerlessness, completely at the mercy of another. So the feeling of total control, domination, and don't hold me back. She's talking about her older sister. I didn't have any power. I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying. She knew exactly how to control me. She used a big plastic spider to terrify me. She knew exactly how to make me do whatever she wanted her to. Sometimes we got on together, but when she decided she had to control me, she knew how to do it. So I knew in our relationship, I was always on edge. I could never relax. At any point, she could be really mean. And that's typical spider, being really mean. And there's often a feeling that the other is too big and powerful, and they're too small and weak to fight back. In spider cases, size matters. The feeling can be that one needs to become bigger and stronger, and only then can you win. The words big and small often appear in the spider patient's narrative, more than in insect cases, in my experience. It's a feeling of strength that I get when I'm playing football, a physical and mental strength, able to exert my will. I've played against guys much bigger than me. I was smaller than I am now. I'd be 8.5 and 9 stone, but I can knock over guys 3 or 4 stone heavier, 6'4". I could jump higher than they could. I expected it to happen. I wanted it to happen. So it would happen. They would be surprised seeing a small person knocking them over. And violence. And the characteristic feature of the violence in spider cases is that it's sudden, impulsive, and extreme. The feeling is you have to overpower the other person quickly. I was always trying to be violent. I would react violently because she had this enormous psychological power over me. She was that much bigger than I was. She didn't need to prove anything. That was terrible for me. The only thing I could do, my only reaction, was to get really violent. There was nothing else I could do. She really tried hard to be mean to me. So, violence. And vibration. They're very sensitive to even slight vibrations. Jar or slight sounds can be felt throughout the body, producing unpleasant vibratory sensation, sometimes causing pain, dizziness, or nausea. Sometimes low humming or vibrating noises are unbearable. I asked him, "Do you have any fears?" He says, "No, nothing. Apart from the noise of a hairdryer." It drives me insane. I can't bear to be near it. What about noise in general? No, no noise at all. Apart from hairdryer, it winds me up. Physically, I feel myself. It's that constant. And the same with the sound from a tinny music system, cheap music system, repetitive noise. Clothing is often dull with a splash of color, little bright color, scarf, brooch, gloves, eye-catching color. Spider children, they love to play spying, lying in wait and hiding, tricks, traps, trapdoors, cunning plans, prisons, prisoners, tying people up. They're just acting out a state. I'll let you read the rest. Okay, let's talk about mammals. What is the most characteristic thing about mammals? Well, it's milk, isn't it? And that's the key to mammal cases, because milk, is nutrition, and nourishment and nutrition is a big part of mammal cases. And the process of suckling and the intimacy and touch, the bonding that involves. So these are all themes in mammal cases. It's what's most characteristic in the species or the type of animal that will be the main theme homeopathically. So what do mammal people want? They want warm, cozy, cuddling, hugging. They want touch. They want things to be comfortable, soft. They want bonding. In our family, we hug a lot, we touch a lot. It comes from me. The nice thing about it is that it follows on through. Hugging and kissing somebody is very important. Because I never had it when I was a child. That's why it became so important to me. Her family described her as having a mountain of love, and that she was a grandmother to the world. This kind of and what mammal people do not want: cold, hard, empty, forsaken. It was a cold home with no warmth and cuddles. I was given 2 dolls, but they were made of china. I remember lying in bed between those cold, hard dolls. Strange, isn't it? 6-year-old girl with behavioral problems. It's a case of lac humanum. I want to stick to my mother and give her kisses and cuddles. What do you like doing best? I love animals. I give them kisses and hugs because they're so cute. What do you like best about them? I love the babies. Mother says her favorite play is about babies, mummies and daddies, always babies. Do you have any dreams? Of kittens and puppies. I often dream about them. I dream of them coming out of their mummy's tummy. Scary dreams of monsters which eat me and mummy and daddy. They eat us in one big chunk. She's hugging her mother and kissing her. Emptiness is a big mammal word. It's like not having nourishment. So if you have the milk, you have all that bonding and nourishment, or the opposite, emptiness, both emotionally and physically. And comfort, I would already emphasize this is an important mammal word, very common. Things like, I feel so comfortable when I'm with my mother. Woman age 34, it's a case of Dharma Dharma. I'm very homesick. All my family are back home. It's nostalgia. That's the theme of Dharma Dharma. Say more about nostalgia. I want the comfort of home. I want the comfort of my parents being around. Say more about this wanting comfort. I should be back home. I'm denying my parents having their grandchildren around. I'm close to them. I speak to my mother every day on the telephone. I want the comfort of having them come here. I'd be happy, so happy if my parents were here. How would you feel? Relieved. We'd all be together. I crave and need my family. Do you get the idea? Very different to the spiders and insects, isn't it? It's all about nurturing connection with family, comfort. Then the opposite, feeling uncomfortable. These patients often feel very uncomfortable with anything to do with their bodies. This includes their appearance. They can dislike anything to do with how they look. If you think about remedies like ambrosia, lac caninum, and it's a visceral experience. When they talk about themselves, they grimace and they cringe and they writhe. They say, "Ugh, I just feel so ugly," and it's a visceral experience. They can also be uncomfortable with their animal nature. In other words, the physical functions of the body, especially those to do with eating, eliminating waste, and sexuality. The instinctive part of their nature is often something they don't like to feel or experience, and can sometimes be suppressed or denied. So very uncomfortable with their animal nature. But, it's just they can be sort of guilt about eating and greed, but also, I had a case, 7-year-old boy, withholding stool, refused to open his bowels. He was still doing it behind the sofa at age 7, once a fortnight. And lac leoninum completely cured that overnight. It's like, really uncomfortable with that animal part of your nature, physical function. And gestures are a lot to do with holding and embracing, and they'll like brooches and things with that kind of image. Clothes, they're like warm, soft, comfortable fur. That lac caninum little girl, the one who bit and scratched, wet the bed at night, slept in bed with 30 teddy bears, just surrounded by all that fur and comfort and warmth. Farouk Masters says lac caninum is almost as specific for